Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 16 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're learning how to think like an engineer using the Arduino Uno R4 Wi-Fi. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee, poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Sunfounder. Sunfounder is actually sponsoring this most excellent series of video lessons. And in this class, we will be using the Sunfounder Elite Explorer Kit. Hopefully most of you guys already have your gear, but if you don't, look down in the description. There is a link over to Amazon. You can hop on over there and pick a kit up. And believe me, your life and my life are going to be a whole lot easier if we are working on identical hardware. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you a new programming technique, a new programming method that allows us to execute a certain set of code only if certain conditions are met. Okay, now these are called if statements, and inside the if statements are conditionals, and those conditionals are the conditions which must exist for the code to be executed that is part of that if statement. Now that's just an introduction. I'll really go into it, so don't get upset if that just went right by you. But if you think of what we've done so far in this class, all of our code has just executed over and over and over. So like, let's say we read a value from the potentiometer and we apply a value to the LED. We read, apply, read, apply, read, apply. It does the same snippets of code over and over and over. Or we ask the user for input and then we print the input. We ask the user for input, print the input. It just does the same thing over and over. But if you think of where we're going in this class, imagine that we were controlling a fan. You wouldn't want to just sit there and turn the fan on. You would want to turn the fan on if certain conditions existed. So let's say that we're measuring temperature. So we would measure temperature, and then we could say if the temperature is greater than 100 degrees F, then what you would do is turn on the fan. Okay, and then if the temperature is less than 90 degrees, you would go ahead and turn the fan off. And so if you were sitting there and the temperature was 95, nothing would change. It would just read the temperature. It's not greater than 100. It's not less than 90. It would just read the temperature, read the temperature, read the temperature. But then when the temperature got above 100, then it would execute the code to turn the fan on. And the fan would stay on until the temperature was less than 90, and then a command would be issued to turn the fan off. So we want certain things to happen only if certain conditions exist. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what I'm going to need to do is get out of your way, come over to the code view, have a little sip of my Go juice. My jet fuel. Yeah, I got my jet fuel. What we're going to do is we're going to open up bare minimum. So you're going to come to File, you're going to say Examples, and you're going to go to Basics, and you're going to open up bare minimum. I always like to check and make sure that my Arduino is connected. You can see on port COM5 that it says the Arduino Uno R4 Wi-Fi is there. That's good. And then I also like to come down and I like to look at the board manager and see that the Arduino Uno R4 board is selected and the Wi-Fi version is selected. So sometimes for some reason these things can get off. So I always just like to check those when I get started. Okay, so what I want to do is let's just write a simple little program that gets a number from the user, okay? And then if that number is positive, the user is notified that they've entered a positive number. If the number is negative, then the user is notified that they have entered a negative number. So what am I going to need? Well, I'm going to need an integer. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. Integer my num. like that. I'm not going to give it a value because we're going to get that from the user. Okay, I'm going to need another one. Let's say I'm going to have my prompt. So I'm going to say a string, and I'm going to say my prompt like that, and I'll get that from the user too. So, or no, I'm going to set that because that's a string that says, please enter your number like that. Okay, who is your friend, Mr. Semicolon. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to read the number, and then I am going to give a prompt, and then I'll get the number from the user. All right, well, we're going to come here, and we are using that serial monitor. So what do we need to do? We need to do a serial.begin 9600. No. We use variables. So we'll come up here, and we will make that baud rate an int. So I'm going to say int, and it will be baud rate, and that is going to be equal to 9600. Okay, like to put my variables at the top of the program. I'm going to serial.begin at what? At the baud rate. Then I'm going to need my semicolon. Now we come down to the void loop, and what do I want? I want input from the user. How do I get input from the user? I ask, I wait, and I read. So I'm going to ask serial.println, and please, no. What do? We come up here. What was it? It was my prompt. So we're going to print ln. We're going to print ln. And what are we going to print? We are going to print my prompt like that. Okay, don't forget the semicolon. And then now we have asked. Now what do? We wait. We wait in a while loop. And while what condition is true? While serial.available open close, while that equals 0, while there is no data on the serial port, while serial.available is nothing there, what do? Well, we create our clause. So I have the open curly to create my while clause, and then it put in for me the close curly. I like to hit return. And then what you can see is this curly closes the while clause, and this curly closes the void setup clause. All right, so as we're nesting these clauses, we have to make sure that we're balancing those open and close curlies correctly. Okay, we ask, we waited, now what do? We read. And what was that? My num. So my num is going to be equal to serial.parse. We made it an int, so it's parse int, and then like that. So I'm going to read it. Now, that was not good. That was a colon. Now what do I want to do? Well, if the number is positive, I want to tell the user their number is positive. If the number is negative, I want to tell the user that their number is negative. Okay, so what do? I do an if statement. If, and then I put a conditional, and the conditional is inside of parentheses. So if, and then my conditional, which is inside of parentheses, and then I'll put my condition in a minute. But just like a while loop, I create a clause. So I create an open curly, and then you see it gives me the close curly. So this opens the if clause, this closes it, and then I'm going to click enter. Okay, now what we have to see is everything, if this condition is true, all the code between the curlies, between this clause, the open curly and the closed curly, all that code is going to be executed. And after each step is done, then it will drop out and it'll go past that curly, and then it will do whatever it's going to do next. Now, I do not like, do you see what I have a problem? Now, look what happened here. This curly is the if statement. This ends the if statement. Well, this one does what? That ends the while loop. But I wasn't supposed to do anything inside the while loop. I was just supposed to sit and wait. So somehow I put my if statement inside of the while loop. That's wrong. So what do? I take that out. And now this is good. I open my if clause. I close my if clause. And then this closes my void loop. This opens my void loop. What's wrong? I never closed my while clause, and I don't want to do anything in it, so I just come here and I close it. So it just sits and loops there waiting for data and doesn't do anything. Okay, so if this condition is true, all the code between the curlies is going to be executed. Well, what do I want? Well, if my num is greater than 0, if my num is greater than 0, then what do I want to do? Serial.println, and I'll say your number is positive, partner. Okay, remember how John Wayne was always saying, what you doing, partner? So we'll use the partner word there. And then, okay, so if my num is greater than 0, then it's going to print out your number is positive, partner. Okay, now what if the other case? What is the other case? Well, if, and then you see I closed it. So I open the if clause, I close the if clause. Now we're going to go to the next if clause. If my num, and what do? I need to put that conditional inside the parentheses. So if my num is less than 0, if my num is less than 0, then what do I need to do? I need to open my clause, and then you see it closed it for me, and then I'm going to come down and enter. So let's just do a little bookkeeping. This is opening the first if statement, closing the first if statement, opening the second if statement, closing the second if statement, and then this curly is closing the void loop. So it really looks like I kind of got all of my curlies balanced out and nested properly. Well, if my num is less than 0, what am I going to do? I am going to say serial.println, and then I am going to say your number is negative, partner, like that. And then we're going to come here and end it with a semicolon. Okay, so it's going to ask me for a number. I'm going to enter the number, and then it's going to tell me whether it's positive or negative. So let's see if that works. And man, I've got a little bit of a problem here with this window, and I want to make sure that you can see it. And I think that's going to be just dandy like that. I think you can see it. Okay, let's run the program. And we hope we don't see any of that ugly little orange business. I don't see any orange, and now it is downloading. And then we're going to get this out of the way. And then why did it not give me a message? Because it printed it before I got the serial monitor turned on. So I will just come and rerun the program by pressing that button. Okay, please enter your number. My number is 10. Okay. Your number is positive, partner. Now, please enter your number. Well, minus 17. Okay. Your number is negative, partner. Okay, so what the program does depends on a condition. It depends on the condition of that number I entered. How does that sound? That sounds pretty darn good. So I know if it's positive or if I know it's negative. Now, if you're thinking like an engineer, you really got to think, have I really covered all possible parameter spaces by having positive and negative numbers? Okay. What special case am I not thinking of? 0. Okay, so what if the number is 0? Well, if I just put 0 in there, it just asks me for another number, but it doesn't give me any context of, it doesn't give me any context of what it did with that number. So what do I need to do up here? I need to put another condition, okay? So I'm going to go after that close of that second one. I'm going to say if, what are we going to say? My num, and then we're going to say if my num equals 0, all right, and then I'm going to open my clause, open my curly, and then I'm going to come here, and then I would say serial.println. What will we say in this case? We could say the number is neither positive nor negative. There's actually people that argue about whether 0 is a positive or a negative number, but we don't want to open that can of worms. And so let's just say, let's not take a stand on it. Let's just say your number is 0, like that. Okay, put a period, and then we're going to put our semicolon. And let's check again our curlies. I've got the open the clause, I've got the close the clause, and then I've got this. Okay, so now we're going to run it. Looks happy. None of that ugly little orange nonsense. Okay, please enter your number. Let's say 5, positive, minus 5, negative. Okay, now let's put 0. Enter your number. We have a problem. What is the problem? I'll tell you what the problem is. And the reason I do this is because you do it, right? This is actually like one of the hardest problems to find, because when you look at your code, it looks so perfect. It looks so perfect, but you made a mistake. And you've got to remember this, because if you don't do Arduino a while and then come back to this, you're going to make this mistake again. If I say if my num equals 0, when Arduino gets there, all it sees is inside of there, my num is 0. Okay, I'll make my num 0. It sets it to 0. What do you want to do? You want to check if it's 0. So you don't say if my equals 0. What you say is if my equals 0. And you guys saw this before, right? When we were doing the serial.available in that while loop, when we ask, we wait, and we read. What did we do on a conditional? Do we have one up here? I can't, didn't we, my prompt, yes, serial.available. So you see, this is the condition that keeps the while loop running. And what did we do? It's like serial.available equal. So if we're using in a condition for equal, we've got to do the equal. And that's in while loops, that's in if statements as well. So if my num equals 0, then we're going to print your number as 0. So let's download that again. Remember that, equal on conditionals. Okay, so let's put a number in. Let's say 5. All right. Your number is positive, minus 5. Your number is negative, and put in 0. Your number is 0. Boom! You see it works. Remember, it's equal. Now also, let's say I want to know if I have a big number. And I'm going to say a big number is more than 10. Now, you've got to listen to me carefully. A big number is more than 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter my number just like I did here. And then I'm going to say if my num is greater than 10, then what I'm going to say is your number is a big number. Okay? Now, I'm going to say if my num is less than 10, then I'm going to say your number is a small number, like that. Okay? So let's run this. Okay, so enter your number. Well, let's say I put 23. 23 is bigger than 10, so that is a big number. What if I put 7? 7 is less than 10, and so it is a small number. Now, what have I not handled very well? I haven't handled 10 very well, because I didn't give it conditions for what to do when it's 10. And man, guys, this, believe me, I can't tell you how important this is. And in real world engineering applications, the errors and the catastrophes always happen at these boundaries between one region and another region. And so what is our region? Greater than 10. What is our region? Less than 10. What is the boundary? It's 10 itself. And you've got to be deliberate to explicitly, mindfully, skillfully handle those boundary conditions. All right. Now, I want you to think, what did I say? It is a big number if it is what? What did I say? It is a big number if it is more than 10. If it's more than 10, it's a big number. So this is good. If it's greater than 10, it is a big number. If it's less than 10, it's a small number. But what if it is 10? Okay, what if it is 10? Well, that's a small number because 10 is not more than 10. So you could think, well, I could add another if statement that says, well, if my num equal 10, no, if my num equal 10, then I would also print your number is small. But what I want you to see is there are other conditions. I could come in and I could say if my num is greater than 10, and then this one would be if my num is less than or equal to. Okay, and then if it's less than, it'll go into this if statement. If it's equal to, it will go into this if statement. So you see, I've tightened up that boundary. So let's run it. Okay, so let's come in and say, what is your number? My number is 11. 11 is, your number is a big number. What if I said 9? Your number is a small number. And what if I said 10? 10 is a small number because it's not more than 10. It's not more than 10, okay? So that is pretty slick. So what do we know? We know greater than, we know less than, we know greater than or equal to. You can also imagine, or we know less than or equal to, and you can also imagine that there is a greater than or equal to. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, equal, and less than and greater than. So those are the things that we've learned so far. So let's see, what if there's another one, like what if we just want to tell someone that the number is not 0? Okay, I want to know if the number is not 0. So what would I do in that case? I would say if, and then I would say I got to get rid of this other stuff here. I got too much stuff there. Okay, if my num, okay, if my num equals 0, no. I don't want to know if it's equal to 0. I want to know if the number is not 0. Okay, I want to know if the number is not 0. The good news is we have a symbol for not, and that is your old friend, Mr. Exclamation point. So this is saying if my num is not equal to, that was very, very bad. I moved it. I was trying to highlight it and it moved it. So if my num is not equal to 0, then what do we want to do? We want to come in and we want to say serial.println. And what we're going to print, your number is not 0. Like that. And then this curly closes that if clause. Then just for good measure, I can then say if my num equals 0, then what could we say? We could say serial.println. We could say your number is indeed 0, like that. Always like to check for balance. Okay, ooh, look at that. What happened? What did I do? You see, it looks like maybe this if statement is inside of this if statement because I didn't close that. So after I do the print, I need to what? I need to close the curly. Now this one, I'm opening the curly, I'm closing the curly, and then this curly closes the void loop. Okay, so now let's try this. Okay, what is your number? My number is 237. Your number is not 0. If I type in 0, your number is indeed 0. Boom! We've got our if statements going. Okay, so let's try a different one. Let's say if our number is even or odd. And I kind of want to show you just different commands and get you used to different commands. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another integer, and the integer is going to call remainder, R-E-M for remainder, and then I'm going to calculate that, so I'm not going to put it in. So what do I want to know? I want to know if your number is even or odd. How could we figure out if a number is even or odd? Well, we're going to come down here. We're going to come down here, and then I'm going to ask, I'm going to wait, I'm going to read, and then I'm going to get rid of this other stuff. So I ask, wait, read, and then I'm going to say my remainder is equal to, what am I going to take? My num, and then mod 2. Okay, what does the modulus do? The mod divides the number. What is this going to do? It's going to take my num, and it is going to divide by 2, but it's not going to give me the answer. It's going to give me the remainder. So what is 5 mod 2? Well, 5 divided by 2 would be 2 with a remainder of 1. So if I put 5 mod 2, if my num was 5, remainder would be 1. If my num was 4, 4 divided by 2 is 2, no remainder. And so there, the REM, the remainder, would be 0. Okay, so 4 mod 2 is 0 because there's no remainder. So if the remainder for my num mod 2, if the remainder is 1, the number is odd. The number is odd. If the my num mod 2 is 1, the number is odd. If the my num mod 2 is 0, then the number is even. Okay, how cool is that? All right, so now let's do that. So I'll say if, put in my condition, if rem equal 1, then what? Equal, right? If rem equal 1, then serial.print ln, and then what am I going to print? Your number is odd. Okay, like that. Okay, and then this time I was good to close out that curly like I should. And then what am I going to say? If the remainder equals 0, and what am I going to say? I am going to say serial.println and say your number is even. Like that. Let's try that. What happened? What happened to me? Who's your friend? Mr. Semicolon. Okay, let's look at this. None of that orange ugliness. We've got the download going, and we got the download going. There it is. Now we're going to come over to the serial monitor. It's asking me for my number, and so let's say I put 13. Okay, your number is odd. What if I say 4? Okay, your number is even. What if I say minus 6? Minus 6, your number is even. What if I say minus 5? Your number is odd. Okay, what? Did that do that? Your number is even. Wait a minute, let's see. Minus 5. What is going on here? So let's print remainder. So we have an unexpected behavior here. we have an unexpected behavior here if rem is equal 0. So let's print rem out. So let's say serial.println, and let's just go ahead and print rem so we can see what it is. See, I'm helping you debug. I'm helping you troubleshoot because we're getting an unexpected behavior. For some reason, that is not going into the odd one here. That is not going into the odd one for negative numbers. So let's see what happens. Let's see if we can figure out what happens there by doing a selective print. Okay, so now what I'm going to say is I'm going to say 3. Your number is odd, and the remainder was 1. That makes sense. 2, the remainder is 0. Your number is even. What if I said -6? It says the remainder is 0. Your number is even. What if I say -5? Look at that. The remainder is -1. So it's reporting the remainder for negative numbers as a negative number. And so what can I do with that? Well, I want it to be if it's 1 or -1, if there's a remainder. How could I do that? I could say if the remainder, instead of equal 1, I could say if the remainder is what? Not equal to 0. Now let's see if it works. So not equal or equal. Okay. So now let's do a 3. 3 is odd. 2. 2 is even. -6. -6 is even. And then -5. Number is odd. Okay, so that's really, really good. So another way we could do it, we could say if the remainder is not equal to 0, or what if we said if the remainder, how about if we took the absolute value of the remainder? So I hate doing this on the fly, but I think it's like ABS. If the absolute value of the remainder, if the absolute value of the remainder equal 1, that would take the -1 and it would turn it into a 1. And so it makes the absolute value function makes everything positive. So let's see if that would also be a way of doing it. At least it's running. At least it's running. And it's downloading. And let's try that now. Okay, let's try that. What I'm going to say is -4. Your number is even. -2. Your number is even. -3. And your number is odd. Boom. So I showed you 2 different ways to get that -1. Now, really, I did this for a purpose, and that is you've got to check your code. And this is the biggest mistake that programmers make. Even salty, professional, tried and true programmers, the problem is they don't check their code carefully enough. Because if we checked it for 2, 3, 4, 5, it works and we think, great. But what didn't work for negative numbers? So you've really got to pound that code and you've got to check it for all possible conditions. What's one thing I haven't checked it for? Haven't checked it for 0. Okay. And if I put in 0, it says your number is even. Now, people will probably argue whether 0 is an even number or not, but if I divide 0 by 2, I don't get a remainder. So I'm going to go with it being even. Okay. I'm going to go with that. Now, this is the other thing that you have to think about. Sometimes you want more than just one condition. Sometimes you want more than just one condition. In that case, you want compound conditionals. So I'm going to give you a number, and I want you to tell me it's odd and positive, it's even and positive, it's odd and negative, it's even and negative, all of those different things. So how would we do compound conditionals? Okay, well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and keep my remainder, but then I'm just going to do these things again. Okay, so now what am I going to say? I'm going to say if if the my num is greater than, if my num is greater than 0, and now, and how would I tell it I want two conditions? This one has to be true and this one has to be true. If my num is greater than 0, I put the double and. If my num is greater than 0 and remainder equal 0. If both of those things are true, then what do I want to do? Serial.println, and then what am I going to print ln? You have a positive even number, like that. Better put my quotes there. Better come here. Okay, and now I'll put my colon. I'm going to check this because I have a tiny little concern whether there's might be a different way that this needs to be done. I want to make sure that I've got the compound and working right. Okay, so it wants my number, and so I'm going to say 4, and if I say 4, it says you have a positive even number. So yeah, that worked right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. Okay, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to paste it. But this time, if my num is less than 0, if my num, ooh, that was crazy business there. If my num is less than 0 and the remainder is 0, you have a, if my num is less than 0, you have a negative even number. How about that? Okay, now there's two other cases that I need to do, and I think what I can do is I can just paste that last one again. So I'm going to paste it again, and so I've done greater than 0, less than 0, even. Now I'm going to do greater than 0, and with the remainder, in that case I have a positive odd number. Okay, and now I'm going to do one more. And that is if my num is, I should paste that. Why didn't I paste that? Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all right. So now this last one is if my num is less than 0. Man, that is really, it's trying to finish those brackets for me. If my num is less than 0, and the remainder is 1. Less than 0, you have a negative, and it is odd. Okay, you see, guys, I can have more than one condition up here. For you to fall into this if statement, two things have to be true. My num has to be less than 0, and remainder has to be equal 1. Okay, so now let's try this. What do you think? Is that good? I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now that is there. So we're going to come up here and we're going to say 3, and let's see what happens. It says 3, you have a positive odd number. Good. 4, you have a positive even number. Minus 4, you have a negative even number. Minus 5. What happened? We forgot down here, right? We made the same mistake that we made before, and that is if it's less than 0, I need to take the absolute value of the remainder, so that if it's a negative remainder, it'll make it a positive, or it'll make it a positive remainder. So now let's try that. Okay, sometimes I make the mistakes on purpose, and sometimes it's just a mistake. You never know for sure, do you? Sometimes I don't deliberately make a mistake, but I tend to be a little sloppy when I'm making these classes because I kind of want problems to come up, and then I want you to see how I troubleshoot them. So I kind of like the problems popping up, because one of the most important things I want you to learn in this class is how to troubleshoot your code. Okay, how to troubleshoot your code. So now we're going to go 3. You have a positive odd number. 4. Where did that go? Positive even number, -2. You have a negative even number, -3, and negative odd. Boom, we got it. Okay, we got it. Now, I would let you go in and handle the 0 case. Like if it's a 0 case, you could just add another step. If statements, just if it's 0, it's 0. Just call it 0. Don't argue about positive, negative, odd, even, or whatever. You could just, you could do it that way. Okay, so we've done all that. Let's try something else. Let's ask it for a color. Okay, let's ask it for a color. And if the color is red, you want to print red alert. If the color is not red, you want to just print the color. Okay, so what am I going to need? I'm going to need a new string. I'm going to need a new string variable, and that new string variable, and I do not need now this rem, I don't need this num, and here on my prompt, instead of please enter your number, please enter your color. Okay, please enter your color, and I'm looking for something right here. If you'll give me just a second. Give me just a second. Okay, this will do it. All right. So now what I want to do is I'm going to prompt, I'm going to ask, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to read, but instead of here, my prompt, what I'm going to need is a string, my color, and I'm not going to give it a value because I'm going to read that. Okay, I'm going to read that in. So then here, we come down here, and then I ask, I wait, and I read, but this time I am reading what? I am reading my color, okay, my color. And then that is going to be serial dot what? Read string, because it's going to be a string. And guys, remember, it's got to be no line ending. When you're doing these inputs from the serial monitor, you have to have the thing set at no line ending, or you're going to get very unexpected results. So now let's take out all these if statements. Let's take out all of these if statements. Okay. And so I read it, and now what do I want to do? I'm going to say if my color, got to put it in the old parentheses, if my color equal what? If it equal the string what? Red. Then what I am going to do is, if that's the case, open curly, close curly, I'm inside the curlies, I'm going to do a serial dot println, and then what I'm going to print is red alert, like that. Put some exclamation points in there. Okay, now what am I going to do? What am I going to do if my color is not equal to red? If it's not equal to red, then I am going to come in, open my clause, open curly, close curly, and I am going to do a serial dot print. What am I going to print? Your color is, leave a space, come over, semicolon, and now it's serial dot println, and then what am I going to print? My color. So I just report back the color. If it's red, I'll give a red alert. Okay, so now let's put this here. Okay, now I'm going to come here, run it. Man, I'm getting low on coffee. A little bit of a long lesson, but I didn't want to break this into two. I think all this stuff really goes well together. So, okay, so now let me hit this button again. Please enter your color. Okay, my color is red. It says your color is red. I didn't get my red alert. I didn't get my red alert. Somebody tell me why I didn't get my red alert. I said, if my color is red, look at that. Okay. No, it says if my color is not equal to red, it prints your color is that. But if my color is equal red, it should have given me what? It should give me my red alert. I didn't get my red alert. Somebody tell me why I didn't get my red alert. In Arduino and most programming languages, case matters. So what did I do? I tested on red. I tested on red, but I didn't test on uppercase R-E-D. Okay? So uppercase R little ed. So what could I do? Well, this would not be an and, this would be a what? An or. So if my color is red lowercase, or if my color is red uppercase, so how do I do an or? Well, you look on your keyboard, usually it's above the enter key and it's above that slash, but it is that vertical bar. And on mine, above the enter key on the keyboard, there is a slash, and then there is the shift slash makes that vertical. How do I do an or? An or is slash slash bar, I guess we'll call it. Or my color equal red, like that. In either one of those cases, we're going to get a red alert. Does that sound good? Okay, let's come up here. Let's run this. Okay, so now what is your color? If I say green, it says your color is green. That makes sense. If I say green, it says your color is green. That makes sense. If I say red, red alert, boom, got it. But now what if I say R-E-D, like that? Red alert, that works. R-E-D little, that works. How about uppercase R-E-D? No red alert. Okay. Now you see, the reason I did this, I wanted to show you how you could do a compound conditional with an R, with an or. We did compound conditionals with an and here I did compound conditionals with an or. You go into the if statement in an or if either of the conditions are true. If either condition is true, you go in. If it's and, you only go in if both conditions are true. Okay, you only go in if both conditions are true. So or, either one, and has to be both. Okay, so you could see that we could come in and we could put like 20 different or statements like uppercase R, little e, uppercase D. So that is just really that is just sort of a mess there. So I'm going to show you really the way you do this. The way that you would do this would be like this. We're going to read my color, and then what we are going to do is we are going to say my color, and then what we are going to do is to lower case, like that. So now that's going to take my color and it is going to change it into all lowercase, and that way it's always just taken the case out of it. So if it was uppercase R-E-D, it would make it lowercase R-E-D. And in that case, I don't need this R. And I am very frightened that if I'm really doing this right, okay? Didn't seem to crash. What I wasn't sure is if I needed to say my color is equal to my color dot lowercase. Okay, but let's try this. Let's try green like that. It's happy with green. Let's try red. Boom! I got a red alert, even though I entered an uppercase. So watch me carefully this time. Now watch this. Uppercase R, little e, uppercase D. And that is going to convert that. That's going to convert that to all lowercase. And then all I have to do is compare it against lowercase red. How is that? That's pretty good. That worked, right? And so let's see. Let me hit enter. Okay, red alerts. You see, that was working. That was working. Okay, guys, what have we learned? We learned greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. We've learned equal, equal. We've learned not equal. We've learned convert something to lowercase to make it easier to compare strings. We've learned that you have to do the no line ending. And we've learned that we can do these logical operators, these conditionals on strings, just like we can on numbers, all right? Just like we can on numbers. And the very important thing we learned is, you've always got to cover those boundaries. And so like if you're going to go in temperature ranges of 0 to 100 degrees and you want to do something different at every 10-degree increment, you've got to make sure that you're watching those boundaries between at 10, what are you going to do? Is 10 going to be part of 1 to 10? Or is 10 going to be part of 10 to 20? It needs to be in exactly 1. Either you go 1 to 10, and then anything above 10 goes from there to 20, and anything above there goes to 30. You see, you've got to decide what you're going to do with those boundaries and be consistent. And we'll probably go over this more in some future lessons. But let's see. What I need you to do is, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. And what that homework assignment is to get out your deluxe little bag of LEDs. Get out your little deluxe bag of LEDs. Get a red one, a green one, and a yellow one. I guess I should say red, yellow, green. And hook up 3 LEDs. And then what I want you to do is I want you to ask the user which LED they want to turn on, and whichever LED is selected, you turn that LED on. Okay, and so it's going to be a user selects the LED to turn on. And this will get us back a little bit more. You see, we kind of got the naked Arduino here without anything hooked up to it. And what we want is we want to get back in and sort of start building a circuit. So a red, a green, and a yellow. And remember, no blue. Blue is for special occasions. So don't use those blue LEDs. We're going to save those for some really special occasion. So that is your homework assignment. Okay, guys, I hope you're having as much fun taking this class as I am making it. As always, I want to give a great big thank you to you guys who are supporting me on Patreon. It is your support and encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys can also help me by giving me a thumbs up and leaving a comment down below. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. When you do, make sure you ring that bell so you'll get notifications when future lessons drop. And most importantly, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people thinking like an engineer and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.